Today on Recruiting Hell, we've all been told in our job hunts that practicing interviews and making sure that you have applicable stories and other questions to ask are the way to go. But what happens when life gets in the way or you can't find somebody to practice with in time? Today's guest has a great solution for just that problem.
The application provides tips and tricks to improve and gives examples of great answers or checklists to verify that your answer is correct. Those examples and tips have been validated by HR specialists. So we don't only use artificial intelligence, but we also teamed up with HR people.
Hello, and welcome to Recruiting Hell. I'm glad you're here with us today. I'm your host, Robb Conlon. It's episode 18 of Recruiting Hell today, and in this show, we have something truly unique. I've never seen anything like what our guest today is going to describe to you. I won't overhype it, because I definitely want to make sure that you, the listener, hear the most exciting parts from the creator of this new idea. As always, when we begin the episode, we always take a moment to recognize and thank those who are just joining us, and of course, those who have listened for a long time. You're all amazing, and this show wouldn't go anywhere without you folks. Now, you may or may not know that we do a quick catch-up time for those who are just tuning in to Recruiting Hell for the first time, mostly because it's very important to outline the purpose of this show and why we call it Recruiting Hell. It's not just a catchy name and fire graphics. So if you're listening to this show, you're here for one of two reasons: getting a new or a better job. Today's job market is tough, and you're in the awful situation I call recruiting hell, where good jobs are few and far between, and scams, underpayment, and ridiculous requirements for entry-level jobs abound. This show is about teaching you to avoid the pitfalls of the modern job hunt and help you build yourself to bring your interview and job hunt game to the next level. This show is here to motivate you and give you the discipline to keep going in your search so that you can get out of recruiting hell. So whether you're on your 200th application, 50th rejection email, or second recruiter ghosting you this week, you are welcome at this table to learn new skills to help you win your job hunt. Now on to today's topic. Interviewing is that magical doorway to a career, and sometimes those doorways open easily, and we don't know why. Or sometimes they remain firmly closed despite our greatest efforts. Our guest is here today to help us all understand where we may be going wrong in our interviews and using his new platform to help you troubleshoot with some great questions that can be generated from his system. It's my pleasure to invite Waïna Landauro of MockMate to the show. It's a tool that job hunters can use to help improve their interview capabilities. Waïna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Definitely. And, it's interesting. You and I almost met through Instagram, which is kind of a strange place to meet people, but I saw you follow the show initially, and we eventually set this up. So it's great. This has been a long time coming, and I've been really looking forward to sharing who you guys are at MockMate with all of our listeners, because your product is something that someone who's looking for a job can really, I think, benefit greatly from. So before we jump into the actual, MockMate part of it, let's start with you, Waïna, and get to know you a little bit. Tell us the Waïna Landauro story before MockMate.
That's kind of a long story. So I basically started my career in startups. My first job was kind of in IT, in a solar power startup. I was working in East Africa, China, and the UK, and traveling all around the world for a few years. And then I decided to go back to Belgium, where I started my own startup. And after that, I became an independent consultant. while I was doing this independent consultant thing, I was becoming an expert in a specific field, and I had the feeling that I needed more experience as a manager. So I decided to do an MBA. And during the MBA, we were constantly trained to take job interviews. We had like very complex workshops, CV workshops, mock interview peers, specific industry focused trainings. So when doing all this stuff, I realized with my skills, I could probably create a small tool to help my peers practice their interviews. So initially the idea came to help other students answer interview questions. So it started like this. And then when people started answering, I realized that I could probably use their answers to give some feedback and analyze what they were saying to the machine. And when I was trying to recruit testers for that, a journalist stumbled upon the product and wrote an article about it. And that's when I really understood it could be big. And that's when I decided to take the leap and like properly make this a long-term plan.
Got it. Well, it's quite the story. And I know from our initial conversation of you and I talking, you told me a little bit about your background and where you've lived and the people in your life. And you are like the most worldly person I've ever met, Waïna. I actually have to want to step off script here, but we'll keep this in the episode. I mentioned some of, your stats, I guess, to my wife. And she said, man, that is the most impressive person I've ever heard. He sounds like he's been all over the world, half Peruvian, half Belgian, married to somebody from America, and all over the world as far as you're traveling, which is so cool. And I think that really gives you a wonderful perspective. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, for sure. It gives a perspective. And I think, it's always like super fun. I think it's a good thing to do when you're young as well.
Wish I would have done it. That's for sure.
When you don't have so much responsibilities and things like that. But I definitely enjoyed my time traveling. Yeah.
Excellent. So we're back to the modern day. We know more about you, Waïna, and now we have MockMate. So you alluded to it a little bit in your story there as to what it was, but in a nutshell, what does MockMate do?
Okay, so MockMate is an intelligent job interview simulator. So basically, it generates random interview questions which candidates can answer to, either by microphone or writing. And then our AI algorithm will analyze the answer and give, constructive feedback on the answers. The application also provides tips and tricks to improve and gives examples of great answers or checklists to verify that your answer is correct. Those examples and tips have been validated by HR specialists. So we don't only use artificial intelligence, but we also teamed up with HR people.
How big is your team? How many people does it take to make an AI job simulator? And what kind of skills do the folks have that work with you?
Yeah, so we're about 5 now. I'm saying about because we had a few interns during the summer that went back to school. But the core team is myself, my wife, who's a marketing specialist, and 2 other MBAs that I met during my time at school. One is a financial wizard, and the other is a professional dancer turned MBA.
Really? Interesting. What makes the concept of MockMate so useful to today's job seeker?
I think, first of all, job seekers have trouble doing mocks or practice interviews. Mm-hmm. I think they can write their little answers, and remember them, but giving them, and get feedback from those answers is kind of difficult. So we are trying to make this available for everyone who has the internet connection. And I think the other thing is that it's available 24/7. It's a machine that runs all the time, day and night. And whenever you have an interview prepared, you can just come on the website and practice.
That is so neat. So you've potentially created the first AI or robot interviewer that I can practice with anytime, day or night. And you mentioned earlier that you bounce the questions off of some HR professionals, but how does it know what to actually ask you? What kind of what does the AI use to kind of say, hey, this is a decent question for this job and for your resume or CV?
Okay, so at the moment, it randomly generates behavioral questions. But when we talk to recruiters, most of the questions they ask are behavioral in most of industries and most roles. We scrape the internet to find the most common ones, and we gather them around 20 categories. So we have conflicts, best achievements, weaknesses, strengths, and we gather more than 800 questions in our platform today. In further versions, we would love the machine to use the job descriptions to decide which questions are the best to ask, but we're not here yet.
Got it. So it kind of picks them out of a pool, so they will be relevant questions, but the next step is to make them the super relevant questions, to really pick the ones that are relevant to that job, correct?
Correct. And we're already collecting the job descriptions from candidates. So we have this information already, and we're already matching the answers of the candidates to the job descriptions, but we don't do the question selections using that.
Interesting. So the other side of the question there is, you mentioned that you're collecting the job descriptions. So when I put the job description in, but then I respond to the question, and whether I record it or type it, how does your system actually score my answer as a good answer or a bad answer?
So basically, the app judges your answer on several criteria. For example, you have the length of your answer, how much you repeat yourself, if you use action words, and if you are specific enough in your stories, etc. Okay,
so it kind of I've seen it, obviously. I've used it before we recorded this, so it kind of gives you a checklist from what I remember of, you did this well, here's another bullet point to improve it, and it gives you that step-by-step feedback, which I think for a lot of people will be really great. So to sort of follow on that previous question, how does an interviewee know that they can trust that analysis advice? And what assurances do they have that the AI isn't going to steer them wrong?
So at the moment, we judge the answers only by the criteria I mentioned earlier. So it's a basic algorithm that we're really working hard to improve. But apart from that, after each questions, we really tailored these tips and tricks to help you progress and steer you the right way. And those little bullet points and example of answers and stuff are validated by HR professionals. So the algorithm gives you tips and a direction on how you perform on the question, but we also have an analysis made by an HR professional to make sure if you have to rewrite your story, you do it the proper way.
Okay, so it's part AI, it's mostly AI, but there is, again, that human element to it that kind of makes sure, and we've seen that AIs sometimes get off track.
Exactly, and we felt that it was important as well, that to have like this stamp of approval from human resources, just to make sure that we don't go off rail or give bad advice to people, obviously.
Sure, excellent. So I think back, we mentioned earlier in this episode, Waïna, you and I again first kind of met via Instagram. I think you followed me first, and I followed you back and went, "What is this thing?" And then you guys obviously shared with me what your platform does. Can you walk us through the actual process? Like if I go to mockmate.com, what would I do if I was a new user to see it work for me?
So it's very simple. Once you land on our website, you hit the call to action buttons that take you to the app. Then you register an account, and it's basically free to use for anyone. So you have unlimited sessions for questions and feedbacks. We're going to release a newer version probably next month. So we'll have a freemium and a premium model by then. But for now, it's all free. You can go train as much as you can and land a job that you really want.
That is awesome. And I love freemium services. I think that's a real great way, especially when you have something that is so helpful to so many people, not only here in the United States, but also, worldwide. There's a lot of people out of jobs. I think it's a really great thing. And actually, that sort of wow, I really did well leading into my next question there. But what about, like, does MockMate work for everybody, all types of job seekers? And is it just one industry or is it just one country?
Yeah, so for now it's pretty generic, but